Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Geo-Institute live stream. It is, of course, the Geo-Institute Summer of Live. You have found it. We roll on week 2. We are back at you this time with our friends from TabLogs. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Geo-Institute. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. I'm Brad Keeler, the director of the Geo-Institute, and again, thanks for being with us today. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this enthralling, I'm going to go with enthralling content today, head over to geoinstitute.org, and there you will find out some equally enthralling information about us, including that we're a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists. Sometimes we get these weird, we'll just call them computer guys like Eric Jensen that we see over there with his microphone. We love them too, out of that 12,000, and we are also part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. If you like what you see today, and we have all done our level best to ensure that that is going to happen, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Here to run the show today, all the way, well, we got a lot of people from Colorado today. I don't really understand what's happening, but all the way from, is it the west side? Are you on the west side, Eric? You are, technically, right? The northwest?
I guess northwest, let's go north. I'm the north side of Denver.
Of Denver, the Denver metropolitan area. It is Eric Jensen. Eric, thanks for doing this today, and you're going to tell us what we're going to see today, and it's going to be wonderful.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brad. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Yeah, my name is Eric Jensen. I'm just north of Denver, Colorado, along with Aurora and Declan, and who are also here in the great state. It turns out it's nice here, which is why people live here, Brad. Anyway, yeah, I'll be your host for today's session, and thank you very much for joining us. Little about me. Yeah, my name is Eric Jensen. I just got a new gig, but I won't bother telling you about that right now. But for the GI, my primary role around here is to be the chair of the Outreach and Engagement Council. If any of you are interested in volunteering your time to get more engaged and help us outreach with as many members of the GI as we can, both locally and nationally, please shoot me an email. My information can be easily found through Brad or Aurora or any of the other GI staff, or I think it's up on the website somewhere as well. So yeah, please send me an email, and I can definitely find something for you to do to volunteer your time to help us all out. I'd like to introduce today our speaker. We have Declan Vanderhor of TabLogs and Scott Deaton of Data Forensics. Just before we jump in, I do have a couple housekeeping notes. This webinar is expected to last about an hour. We're going to keep it a little bit different this time, a little more interactive. I've been asked to personally interject some questions kind of as we go, try and make this a bit more of a conversation than these things typically are, which is great. We'll see how it goes. I think it's going to go really nicely. But if you have any questions or comments or things you want to chat about, please put them in the chat, and we'll have a session at the end, Q&A at the end, where you are welcome to. We'll answer some of those questions. We are recording today's session, so a link will be sent to all registrants. So if you missed something or what have you, you are welcome to go look back at it later. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit what we're going to do today. I have a little bit prepared here from Declan, so I'm going to read it here. The geotechnical industry is at a genuinely interesting inflection point. The sunset of the dominant legacy platform, the rise of open data standards like AGS and DIGS, and a new generation of purpose-built tools are converging at the same time. And there is a real question on the table: is how does the industry move forward without repeating the same mistakes it made 30 years ago? So our speaker, again, Declan Vanderhor, has some strong views on that, which he's going to talk to you about today. He is a practicing geotechnical engineer, and he founded a software company called TabLogs that is operating in over 20 countries. He is actively involved in shaping the very standards we'll be talking about. He'll also be joined today, again, by Scott Deaton, president of Data Forensics, and another key vendor who is leading the DIGS data exchange. So without further ado, Declan, I believe it's time to share your screen.
Perfect. Let's do it. Thanks for that, Eric. Perfect. All right. So this is a presentation, democratizing software for geotechs. Cool. And yeah, we have been. It is a kind of weird title, and we have got a few questions on it so far. So I'm happy to kind of explain what I mean by that. So essentially, democratizing software, I see as geotechs and end users being able, and the businesses they work for, being able to pick software that they can afford, that works best for their business and their use case, and not the software that's mandated by a particular client they might be doing work for. And yeah, that's kind of what we'll be touching on today. Quite a clear way of being able to just pick a good option for you guys and be able to service multiple clients with that same software and operating system you've built your entire business around. So yeah, that's more or less the subject for today.
All right, sounds great.
Cool. So the agenda, what do we mean by democratization? I already touched on that briefly, but we'll chat about the current landscape, DOT fragmentation, what we did 30 years ago with gINT, and why that's kind of had its pros and cons, but why that's not going to work today, and why now is a really good point in time to make a change in how we do things across the US. Is what we're proposing today realistic? We'll touch on some really good use cases and examples in other markets outside the US where data exchange has worked quite successfully, and take some learnings from that, and then also touch on why the US is a particularly interesting scenario and some of the challenges that are unique to this market. Then we'll touch on TabLogs capabilities, log configurations in action. It's kind of our way of solving the problem here, and our kind of overall vision of one operating system, and any DOT can accept a format or a deliverable from that operating system. And there's multiple different OSs out there for geotech data collection and reporting and database management, which we'll share some of them today. That's why Scott's here as well, to add his take on all of this. And then we'll throw it to QA at the end there.
Yeah, sounds great. Just as a quick reminder, if you see anything that's of interest to you, please drop a question into the chat, and we'll get to it at the end. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Declan. Sounds great.
Cool. So I'll touch on briefly a little bit about TabLogs. Essentially, we're a software that's built by Geotechs for Geotechs. It's a software that was initially built around my personal frustration as a geotech out in the field, and kind of grew from there. So anyone across TabLogs who interfaces with a client of ours, geotech or environmental, will usually be will be a geotech or environmental engineer themselves on the TabLog side. So the product is really guided by end user geotechs who know what we need and what our peers need from a data collection software that gets adoption, reports, cross sections, that kind of thing. We're backed with a really talented team of over 35 software developers, data scientists, AI engineers, to make it all happen. Used by over 20,000 engineers across 20 countries, I think we mentioned, actively involved in DIGS committee calls and AGS working groups, and not just building the standard, we're trying to get involved in shaping it to really what our end users and geotechs need from a data standard and the software that makes it all possible. Glad to report we've got about 20 DOT configurations built inside of our platform, so I'll touch on where you can find them and what they look like. And our overall mission really is to create a professional grade geotech software that's accessible without barriers to any firm that wants to use it. And some of the customers we work with in the US on the right there. So did start out replacing primarily gINT software in around 2019, and we incorporated as a business. So we have been at it for a while, way before gINT replacements were cool, and gINT was even, hinting at shutting down. So yeah, hopefully it's some learnings we can bring to this today, and of course with Scott here as well, it's hopefully a useful session for everyone. You'll notice a lot of these logos as well, they're consultancies. That's really where we built our entire product and business around, and over the years have kind of worked from consultants naturally and organically up into government and DOTs, and yeah, that's something that's quite unique, I think, about our business too. Perfect. So
I have a quick question for you. So you mentioned being actively involved in DIGS and AGS and all those working groups. There's obviously a lot of consultants that do that and a lot of academics that are involved. But this is a little interesting position for a vendor. What does your involvement kind of look like in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. So as part of our business, we're interfacing with lots of end users, lots of consultants every day. Each of them come to us with their own way of naming samples, tests, logging descriptions. So we have quite an intimate understanding of the flexibility that's required from a vendor to get adoption from the actual consultant and then user using the logging boreholes day in and day out. And to be able to, I guess, bring that and inform data exchange formats and the development of them and how flexible, where they need to be flexible and how we manage that, I think is just important, and knowing where to draw the line between, that's a vendor responsibility and that's a data exchange responsibility. Has been added some context to, the development of some of these formats. And Scott's on every single one of those calls too. Do you have anything to add there, Scott?
No, I think that's very much the same kind of role we play. The flexibility and understanding what different organizations' needs are and how that fits into AGS or DIGS is really important, and that's where I think that's where the software vendors play a critical role, because sometimes the data interchange standard committees may be going down a road that doesn't really make sense from a data perspective, because they may not have the data science, computer science background that people like Declan's team and our team would bring to the table.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. So I'll touch on a quick intro to what TabLogs does as a product. I'm not going to do like a live demo of every single feature today. We're really here for one purpose, which is to chat about our main topic. But yeah, in a nutshell, TabLogs as a business focuses on three main areas: data collection, primarily digital data collection, reporting, so all of your factual reporting associated with site characterization or geotech reports. So your boring logs, cross sections, GIS, high quality site plans, your general photo logs, all of that kind of thing. We automate and can do really quickly. And then database management is the final tier. And really, once the data is in TabLogs, if it's logged through TabLogs, it's logged the right way in a really granular fashion. You can take it anywhere you want, whether that's into a drafting package, an analysis package, or a data exchange format. And a big part of that data management piece too, which we'll touch on today, which is really tied in with log configurations and data exchange, is mapping. So how to import data from wherever the hell it came from, whether it's gINT files, a historical file, or another vendor software, and then export it in whatever format you need to, and handling the mapping between customer-specific pick lists and log preferences, specs, and then mapping them to consistent fields in DIGS and AGS is a key part of data management in TabLogs.
Are there any specific hardware requirements, or I'm guessing
yes.
There's a license systems and that sort of thing?
I did kind of skip over that. TabLogs are made up of two main components. We have a field app and a desktop app. They do speak live to each other as well. So if you're logging in the field, you get live feedback from the office. Field app will work. It's completely device agnostic. So Android app or Android or iOS, Apple. We've got a separate app in each app store, and it's a downloadable app built around that OS. So it works. It's stable offline, which is really important to have, of course. And then the desktop app is a browser-based app that's work on any browser. Perfect. So we'll get down to the topic. What do we actually mean by democratization? And which we've covered a few times already, but AGS and DIGS exist to enable data transfer. But what it really means is, and the real purpose, which I think sometimes gets lost in the weeds a little bit, is the underlying purpose is to let geotechs use whatever software is best for them, not the one that's mandated. And at this point, we've got across 50 state DOTs, another 10 Canadian provinces. There's probably about 6 different platforms in active, well, there is 6 different platforms in active use across those states and provinces. And, there's quite a few options out there now, and the way we need to go about things needs to be different and not what we've done previously. And, the misunderstanding is that from a lot of consultants is they must match whatever tool their agency uses, and that's just not the case anymore. It was, 20 years ago, but it's not the case anymore. So no consultant is switching their core operating system for logging, reporting, and database management. It's integrated with their ERPs and all that kind of thing, depending on what client they do work for that day. It's just not a realistic expectation from DOTs, and they know this. And an example, it could be a company like Terracom that services all 50 DOTs. There's absolutely no way they're going to have multiple operating systems for their geotech data, because they've got quite a stringent data process and management system internally, and it's just untenable. And then you go to another example where you might have a 1 or 2 office consultancy in LA, for example. You might say, well, they only have one DOT to keep happy. Why don't they just use whatever that DOT uses? Well, it's not really the case when you dive a little bit deeper. They've got, LA Public Works. That's a client of theirs, and they use a system. And then Department of Water Resources in California, they use a system. And LADOC has their own system, and Caltrans has their own system. And pretty quickly, you've got a small consultancy with 4 different ways to log and report and database manage their software, the geotech data, which is just, no matter where you sit, it doesn't work. We're going about a different way of solving that problem.
If you'll humor me for a second, I'm coming from a place of ignorance here as someone with very dainty modeler's hands that like to stay nice and clean. We have a live audience today, so I'm wondering. I guess I don't have a personal reference for how big of a scale this problem really is. So I'm curious if people wouldn't mind dropping in the chat how many different client specs or DOT specs that they currently manage in their day-to-day. I'm just curious. What an opportunity to take a poll here. Maybe we can come back to that later at the Q&A and see what we got. I'm curious.
Perfect. Yeah, we can come back to that one when some answers come through.
Oh, we got one right here actually. Hold on, Brad just sent me 25 plus was the first one here.
Oh, there we go.
In the U.S. and Canada alone.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. Good to know.
Yeah, good. Glad we're on the money there. It's probably worth adding a little bit of background, and honestly, there's probably no one better to talk to this than Scott, but I'll add my little piece here. How we solved this 30 years ago and the problem with that. So 30 years ago, the industry faced similar kind of fragmentation in specs. Every DOT had their own. The solution was use the only tool available at the time, which became mandated for years, which was gINT. And that became the de facto standard. And this wasn't really a fix of the problem, it's just a deferral, but it was manageable because there was only one solution. And it was still a bit of a pain with different libraries and schemas from DOT to DOT, which I'm sure Scott will touch on, but it was manageable, but it wasn't really a modern way of handling that data. And now with kind of sunsetting in 2028, we're back to where we started, except the stakes are a lot higher, and so we need to kind of put together a industry accepted plan across consultancies and agencies on how we're going to approach the problem here.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on this one. So if I take a step back in time 20 years or so, it was about in 2006 that we were talking to Salvatore Corona, the founder of gINT, about this very problem, where when we looked at the published versions of gINT files that were available on the gINT website for download, basically there were every government agency he came across, he created a different data model for. And that's a big problem. And it's been basically handcuffing our industry for the last 25 to 30 years because of that unfortunate decision. And we talked to him about, you need a standard data model because, why do we call blow counts in one data model something different than blow counts in a different data model in the same gINT type of environment? That doesn't make sense to us. And so really, we come to it from the perspective of, if you have the data, you can report it and you can deliver it to whoever you need to. And so actually, Declan probably didn't know this, but we actually had clients back in like 2006 who had a standard data model, and they would export the data to the different DOT formats that they needed. So they didn't have to change the way they were working in order to deliver the data. So we were a bit ahead of the curve there doing that 20 years ago, but that's definitely not a lot of organizations in the industry were doing that kind of work.
Yeah. Perfect, thanks, Scott. So yeah, why is now the moment to correct our course? So as I mentioned, we now have around 6 solutions. The DOT market might be split about 5 different ways in the US at the moment, and that in itself really demands a modern approach to data management and sharing. AGS and DIGS, are a really good step in the right direction, and this is the right approach at the end of the day. And they're open formats. Any compliance software can support. But what I've kind of mentioned so far is, or previously, was the magic really comes from the software that meets engineers where they are, and then makes compliance to DIGS and AGS effortless. And not just using a one-dimensional tool and mandating that to consultant. So that's what we'll kind of touch on today with some of the Scott's solution, rock science and RS log as well. And we'll actually do a live demo of TabLogs and how we, from the vendor side, make compliance with DIGS effortless. And that's the opportunity in front of us right now. And it's the problem TabLogs has really worked at for years to try and build that flexibility around. And there's a lot of work in the background that us vendors are doing to try and make this as easy as possible for consultants to adopt. It should just really be a one-click export for the geotech.
So what makes you confident that this is something is different this time? Like, or is this, you've been around a while, how is this not just hype?
Yeah. So just because it's been done before in other markets. So we know it's a system that works. We know data exchanges make sense. And it's probably leads on to my next slide, I guess, which is what we're proposing here realistic? And it is. AGS has a proven track record in Australia, Europe, UK. It's been used for over a decade there. And pretty much every digital deliverable for any project, not just a large one, and like a mid-rise development. That will be drilled by not the consultant. The UK is slightly different. They have their drilling consultants and their engineering consultants that are split. You'll have drilling contractors logging and outputting AGS files like regularly. That's their deliverable to the consultant. So not only is it possible for consultants to get to export data in a regimented way, drilling contractors are doing it en masse in outside markets. So it is possible. Across Euro code, British standards, and multiple languages. So that's their unique challenges. But I should stress the US is quite a bit different, and DOTs have a lot of pull here, and they have their own logging spec and manuals and their own way of doing things on a state-by-state basis. And the vendors really have to, step up their game to be able to manage that kind of level of flexibility on the front end, but maintain DIGS or AGS on the back end. So yeah, that is acknowledged by TabLogs, and the rest of the vendors will chat on today, and we've got a unique way of tackling that. Cool. That's pretty much covers what I was going to go over here. Today, I hope to take a few different vendors and offer them up, just so you can look at how they solve this issue, and then we'll finish up on how TabLogs does it. So Ali Reza couldn't make it today from Rock Science, but they're actively involved in the DIGS committee as well and building this out from the vendor side. So they've got gINT, DIGS, Excel, imports, exports, JSON, and they've got a pretty cool way of dealing with imports and exports. So recommend, if you're interested, have a chat to them. And then I'll hand it over to Scott to talk through his slide.
Declan. So the way we work with Open Ground is very similar to what Declan is describing with TabLogs. Is you shouldn't need a different tool to work with 25 plus 50 different DOTs, 60 different DOTs. You don't need all those different software tools. If you have the data, we can report it. And a borehole log it's a great deliverable, but it's really not the only deliverable. It shouldn't be anyway, because the data is actually much more valuable than just the PDF borehole log. You absolutely want the borehole log to be able to ground truth what's being provided in that data interchange file, but it's just part of the puzzle. Something that we think it's really important, and we have lots of DOTs that we work with, and we always promote that it's all about using data interchange, because we don't believe that necessarily the tool that a particular organization chooses is the right tool for a particular consultant. That's really the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. And so you need a tool that fits your process, your workflow, so that you can have a competitive advantage, because you can streamline your workflow to best fit your needs and be as efficient as possible, so you can get your logs out the door, your sections out the door, your data models out the door, your 3D models in Leapfrog or whatever it happens to be. So we have the single source data entry workflow all the way from your field logging through your 3D modeling in Leapfrog and Civil 3D in Open Roads Designer. And then ultimately, we produce not only the logs, but the data. So we're happy to talk to you about how we do that with Open Ground. We routinely are helping organizations with their compliance with generating DOT deliverables, whether that's in some cases, until DIGS is taking hold with some of the different DOTs, we actually can export to the native gINT format that a particular DOT wants from Open Ground. So like, do you want it in DIGS? Do you want it in gINT? Do you want it just the PDF logs? You want all of the above? You can have all of the above. If you've got the data, you can report it and deliver it how you need.
Yeah, that's a really important point you raised there. Is today not every DOT accepts DIGS. It's not, it's something that it's definitely a direction the industry is going. But today we need to, as vendors, also have the option to map a GINT file that a DOT might require, or whatever format it is. So yeah, that's what I believe every one of the vendors here that we're bringing onto this call have built that capability into their software. Perfect. All right, and this is how TabLogs solves it. It's something we call log configurations, and a log configuration is a pre-built rulebook for any specific DOT clients, because clients have their own configurations. Every client of ours set their log to ASTM, but they have their own preferences around how they want to order parameters in a soil description or things like that. So client, consultant, and engineering spec configurations. So we've got one for ASCE or Burmeister or ASTM, Canadian Foundation Engineering Manual. These are all things that we, I guess, build under the log configurations umbrella. And what a log configuration encapsulates with TabLogs is essentially three things. So it defines how a user collects data in the first place. So how they collect each of the soil descriptions or parameters, how they collect their test, the terminology they use, the sample or in situ test names they use, that kind of thing. That's all baked into our digital data entry workflows, and also back in the office as well if you want to data enter on pen and paper. And then from there, it encapsulates how the reports come out. So for DOT, I think this example here is from NC. That's just baked into a configuration too. So you can log it, then you'll have a log preview automatically on the right templates that are DOT accepted. And that extends through to preferences around how they like their cross sections drawn. Florida DOT don't even do bore logs; they do kind of microstation simplified stick cross sections, and all of those preferences get rolled into a configuration. And then the third area is the digital deliverable and the data management aspect. So what the import mapping into that config looks like, what the export mapping and digital deliverables look like. So if they accept DIGS, that'll be baked into that configuration. If they have their own unique export, that's an option under that config too. So kind of three main areas that are covered, and pretty much all the areas you need.
So to make sure I'm following here, is this TabLogs does this transition work, right? A DOT or some other user would not need to do anything, right? Is this like, are your staff or TabLog staff building these configurations? Are the DOTs themselves, or the consultant? Like, how does it actually work to get one of these?
Yeah, because there's a bit of work in this, right? getting all the workflows done, all the reports done, and the digital deliverables mapped. So we do have a kind of task force inside TabLogs. Any spare time from our CS team or our onboarding team is spent building configurations. We prioritize the ones that our clients need from us, and we'll build them out. Usually it is with help from our clients who might have an active DOT project going on, and they know exactly what the requirements are that day from the DOT, that template revision, that kind of thing. And we build it with our clients, or we work with the DOT directly to build their spec in. We do not charge for it, which is, I guess, kind of unique with what we do. It means that a DOT doesn't have to be a client of ours, although some DOTs are and use our software internally. They don't have to be for us to want to build their configuration and put some manpower behind it, because the chances are that DOT might have half their consultants using TabLogs and want a config to help them work for that DOT. That makes it a lot easier. So yeah, we build it internally, either with help from the consultant or the DOT. Cool. And yeah, this kind of touches on my previous answer. This is process that we work with DOTs or any clients. They could be municipalities, doesn't matter. And we work with them to review their standards. We go away, build all the templates, and then send it for final review. Process can take anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks usually. And the reason it is so quick is because we don't have to go through procurement cycles with DOTs to get them to, use it or, pay us to build these kind of things. We just want to do it for the betterment of the industry. So, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. And as I mentioned, like when we are mapping exports in these configurations, they don't need to be just digs. It could be all the standard stuff too. So exports to CAD, which might be your drafting packages, Civil 3D, OpenRoads Designer, or analysis tools from Bentley Sequence and Rock Science. Depends what import files they require, and we can map the fields they need. So you can maintain your existing workflows back in the office for drafting or analysis. Cool. All right. So we've got a bit of time. If you want, I can jump into like a live demo, show you actually what those 3 areas look like. Tweaking what a workflow, logging workflow and data collection looks like in the log configuration. Then we can jump into modifying some reports. And then third, we can look at mapping some data into an import or an output under that configuration.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Nothing's better than a live demo. So good luck. By the way, just a reminder, if you got any questions, please toss them in the chat. I'm assuming we're getting close to the Q&A session. So if you have any, let us know.
Okay. So what a TabLogs desktop app looks like. We'll jump straight into settings and configurations. You can see this is just a demo account. We have a few configs in here. And I'll go to our configuration library. This is where you can find configs for different DOTs, different logging specs like ASCE, and pick it up and run with it. And it helps consultants as well and the end users, because if you haven't logged to a certain DOT spec before, it might be somewhat unfamiliar. You might forget to log some important parameters in the fields, and this just makes it really easy to collect, report, and give some decent deliverables, even if you aren't intimately aware of that spec. So see, we have a few here. And this is something we're continuously building on, and we even have clients who will build the specs because for a unique agency or client, and freely offer it up into this public library for everyone to leverage. Yeah, there's a few O's going around. Yeah. Cool. So that's configuration. I'll jump into one. Let's start with the ACM on something we should all be familiar with, hopefully, and look at some of the options under this configuration. This way you can set your default preferences around coordinate systems. We have all the state plan coordinate systems. There's like 6,000 of them across the US. So you can pick your default measurement system. You can log in imperial, report in metric for our Canadians on the call. And then our modules. So everything you'll see when you're logging a borehole in TabLogs, or the sheets you'll see in the desktop app when you're entering this data into a table, they are what we call modules on the right. And we'll go into subsurfaces and have a play around with some of our workflows when logging material. And there's 3 main tables here that are probably worth noting. Workflow builder, this is where you can build your dynamic workflows. So this isn't 30 drop-down menus and pick which drop-down menu may or may not apply to the soil you're logging. That doesn't get filtered option. What we've built here is dynamics around every step around that unique standard under the log config, and it just makes it effortless to log correctly to that spec. Even right down to for a clay, it's going to ask for consistency, plasticity. For a sand, it's going to go, okay, what's the grading, what's the density? And are we going to allow users under the spec to log, very soft to very hard clay? Probably not. I know I would have got a slap on the wrist back in the day if I logged that. So, these are things that you can build as preferences into your workflows. And you can log in a workflow fashion like this in the field app. And in the desktop, you have the choice between a workflow and kind of a tabular bulk data entry option. As you can see, as we're going down here, our descriptions are getting built out. So that kind of takes us on to the next description. Before I leave Workflow Builder, I just want to touch on something that's really important here. So if we go to soil type, you can see, okay, for this step, it's going to tie to the TabLogs soil type database field. And TabLogs is really careful not to add database fields that may already exist, or we really protect that. So if there's something we don't already have, reach out to us and we can add it. But we audit every single database field we have. That's because anything we tie across 100 DOT specs or whatever, the configs we build, every single parameter needs to tie back to a recognized TabLogs database field. So then we can port it out into a DIGS file or an AGS file the right way. So everything always maps back to a consistent database field, regardless of what the user sees on the front end. And that's really important, something that gINT, which it's great software for the time, but it never had. Cool. And you can say, okay, for this step, we're going to only show it when our origin type is a soil type, or the rock is extremely weathered. That's when we want to populate a soil logging workflow. And then here are all our standard options, and we can add some step information, which might be a little excerpt from your standard to help users in the field with what's plasticity and things like that. Cool. So that's workflows, and now we have a lovely workflow. We want to, I guess, build a description with it, and this is where you can build really complex descriptions. You can have variations of descriptions around different types of soil, whether it's granular material, cohesive material, rock, till, you name it. And you can do your soil parameter ordering and edit elements and say, well, we want to hide it under these conditions, or what happens if we have very stiff to hard logged? How do we handle those conjunctions or multiple values? Do we want a dash or a 2? Perhaps we have a null value, and what do we want punctuated before and after that text? And do we want to capitalize? Do we want a line break after it? It's do we want percentages shown in the description? All of these things are things that we've thought about, and only things you pick up when you're on board hundreds and hundreds of end user clients with their own specs and preferences, and hopefully it means we have a lot of flexibility here for anyone who wants to build a spec. Cool. And then the classification code builder, that happens all in the background. So we just logged clay, high plasticity, very soft, whatever. And it's given us an ASTM recognized soil name, and then also this USCS classification. That all happens in the background, and that's logic that exists too. So an engineer in the field can just focus on logging what they actually see. Cool. I'm sure there's some questions coming through on the chat about this. I think it's pretty cool stuff. Speak up if there is. I'm happy to answer. So that's pretty much the logging side of a configuration. Now we can go through into a project and just check out a report and start playing around with some templates. Cool. So this is just a really simple environmental log. We have one with labs, maybe. It might be a better one to have a look at. But this template can be modified. You don't need to go through like a 2-day course to learn how to modify a template or anything. It's pretty straightforward, and we can go to like log reports here, customize a log, and you can see kind of the options here for this. Columns from top to bottom, from left to right on the page, and you can see this chart. We can make it a scatter plot, a bar graph. Maybe you want to make the well installation, let's just move this to the left and update the log. You kind of see it populate on the right as you're building it out. There's 6 main column types you can build into a report: text, graphic, text and graphic, scale, which works for elevation scales, depth scales. You can have photos in a row or a column, and then chart, and you can have multiple axis charts and all of that fun stuff. Pretty much any lab, monitoring while drilling, CPT data, whatever you have handy, that all plots off in a boring log. So that's how we quickly spin up a report as part of a configuration. And we can also do the same for things like cross sections. Let's go to fence diagram, and I'll just show you like an example fence diagram that we can save to a config too. And this might be, a DAT, header or footer, style of sticks on a fence, whatever their preferences can be, or can be saved to this and just be kind of a template ready for use in a certain project. Everything's editable here. It can be exported to DXF or a CAD file if you needed. This gives you a quick idea. There's a lot to cover in TabLogs, but I'll spare you the details. But that's the reporting side of the configurations. And then finally, we've got the database management side and the mapping. So if we go to an example of that, and we'll just map a GINT file, something we're all somewhat familiar of. And we'll map it into a ASTM config. So that's important because you might have a file from an outside source and you want to map it into a particular configuration, because the mapping is going to slightly vary based on the config and the spec you're logging to. So that's why we have that option. And then we can just pick a GINT file. And you can see here it's going to flag everything and has them automatically mapped. Because every GINT file is different. This is something that Scott mentioned on that slide. There's quite a few GINT data models and schemas out there nowadays. So you need the flexibility to be able to map these in. We'll auto map the majority of them, but as I mentioned, everything's different, and you need that ability to map some additional fields manually. Unfortunately, we've got a mapping file already for this one, and it's mapped everything for us there. You can see there's no more alerts. We can go ahead with importing our data. But all mapping's not created equal. It's not sometimes not as simple as just mapping fields in a GINT file to mapping fields in TabLogs. You might need to add logic along the way. So a really classic one is GINT files don't have end values a lot of the time. So you might want to add in a calculation which adds the blows from interval 2 to and interval 3 to calculate your end value for you and bring that through to TabLogs if you want. So there's all these kind of logic steps you can do along the way when importing, mapping an import file or mapping an export file. And of course, all the standards, AGS, DIGS, DXF, are all already mapped for you, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you do want to customize something like for a particular DOT, you might still be on GINT or a software that doesn't really support any of this. It can be done quite simply on a page like this. Yeah, so I know I covered a fair bit there. But that hopefully gives you a taste of what us vendors are doing on the software side to make something like DIGS and AGS a reality. And you can kind of just go straight through to a project now. Go to exports, pick your desired export type, and run with it and export on the project. Cool. All right, that's the live demo. I'll stop here and finish up the slides, and we can go to questions. Okay, and the aim of all of this, hopefully, is just happier geotechs all around. it's an optimistic view, but hopefully we can get there. So happier DOTs. DOTs, at the end of the day, they get higher quality deliverables quicker and cheaper. The consultants use, their Geotech OS that's integrated already with their internal systems. Their staff are fully ramped and experienced at using it. And this means accurate, efficient, high quality deliverables for that DOT. The consultant's not just picking up a software they're unfamiliar with and then jumping into it and trying to log 200 boreholes. That's not good for anyone. Happier consultants. So the consultancy is working with multiple clients. They don't need to pay and maintain 6 different geotechnical data management software. Run with the best software for them that they can afford, that's integrated with their internal systems and properly rolled out. Regardless of what clients they work for now and in the future, TabLogs will have a configuration built and waiting for them. And it's not just TabLogs. Open Ground are working at that as well, and RSlog. And because configs encapsulate everything from data collection, reporting through to the digital deliverable, they take all the heavy lifting away from a geotech who's just there to be a geotechnical engineer and not work out how to, a brand new spec and work out how to map things. It's kind of really designed to be a plug and play and make things as easy a lift as possible. Cool. And that's me done.
All right. Well, thank you, Declan. That was great. We do have a couple of questions, a few from the chat here. The first one is just a sort of a practical one that I'm assuming someone's going to want more information. But do you have configurations, or have you worked with, let's see, Washington State DOT, or I'm assuming Oregon Department of Transportation?
Yeah, we've worked for WashDOT in the past. Oregon, I'll have to check that list that we've got there. We've also got a list that isn't published that we're currently working on in the background. But yeah, we are talking to a lot of the DOTs out there and building specs, whether it's for the client or for the DOT themselves. But if you want a spec, let us know, and we'll get cracking. It's just what we prioritize at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure in the YouTube comments or whatever, I'm sure we can put your email address and all that kind of good stuff if people have specific comments like that and want to get in touch with you and your company. I'm guessing that's easy to find, right?
Yeah, that's it. You can go to our website and book a demo, and we'll do kind of a one-on-one walkthrough of the software, and exactly what you need config-wise from it. Yeah, that's all free, and we've got quite a bit of availability. It's just book a time that works for you and your team.
Oh, and Declan, go full screen so we can look at your face.
Oh, yes.
Okay, next question. Just what do you say to a geotech who's never had the opportunity to use one of these digital field logging tools and is nervous about that first time experience?
Yeah. I'd say keep it as open mind as you can. Yeah, I think it's not going to be faster for the first log you ever do digitally. Don't expect it to be, but you can trust that it's going to be faster than pen and paper shorthand. Once you're used to it, and that usually takes like a couple of logs tops. If it wasn't, we just would have zero adoption now in the field. And that's something where it's the entire reason we built TabLogs is purely for the digital data collection side, and then we kind of moved more into the desktop app and building that functionality that you see today to a more rounded product. But we really started as a digital data collection system that's designed for grumpy drillers with mud all over their hands, with hands double the size of mine, to pick up and want to use. And put plainly, if it isn't quicker than pen and paper shorthand, it just doesn't get picked up. So that's always been our aim, and I think that would be my pitch to the field logger. That being said, a lot of our consultants, they might have 80% adopt field logging, and there's 20% that just like pen and paper. That's absolutely fine. We have our desktop app, which is kind of like a cloud-based GINT. It's spreadsheet based, and you can just populate bulk edit tables like you would in a traditional desktop software, and that's quick. Probably worth noting on the table side of the desktop app, we do have all the QA/QC logic built in that you get with workflows. So it's like a table, but if you log a clay as a main soil type, it's going to grey out the density cell and green light the consistency cell. So it's kind of like table data entry on steroids.
And then I have another question here. In the fence diagram you showed, who's doing the interpretation? Is there some sort of standard algorithm you guys have, or where's the judgment?
Yeah, that's a good question. With the engineers, so very much engineering judgment. Where we do help engineers by allowing them to pick whether they want linear interpolation or curves. But that's just kind of as far as we go. Those polygons will draft automatically, and you can peter them out and expand them, group boreholes and sticks exactly how you like to get comfortable with a model you're happy with. But yeah, we leave that to the engineers.
And another question: Does importing logs contribute to your log count?
No. So we based our subscriptions, probably a good question. It's from someone who knows how we price. We price based off logs per month, is roughly how we bracket our pricing tiers. Mm-hmm. That's important because we do not limit access to our software based off arbitrary user licenses or anything like that. So regardless of how big the consultancy is and whether admin gets use out of the software by setting up the project, and maybe a junior engineer can use the software wherever he needs for 2 hours a month. No one's paying for extra licenses there. It's really designed to be a collaborative space for your geotechnical investigations. In terms of log counts, importing logs doesn't. It's usually something that we facilitate during an initial onboarding with TabLogs, and there's multiple ways we can import logs, either from old GINT project files or from stacks and stacks of filing cabinets and old PDF logs that need to be AI OCR'd into TabLogs. That's kind of standard onboarding with us.
Gotcha. We talked about Washington and Oregon, but what about Florida? Florida DOT.
Florida DOT. We're aware of the spec. I think I mentioned them during the presentation. We know exactly what their outputs look like, what they need from us, and the clients who do work for them. And we're building their spec. I don't think it's live yet, but yeah, all of the lovely F.dot exports that we're used to, they're easy to build in TabLogs.
Wonderful. So I think it's now 1 o'clock. I believe this wonderful stream is now over. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Declan and Scott, for your presentations. I think a lot of the other questions here are ways to get in touch with you, Declan. So for everyone watching the live stream, this will remain active on YouTube, and I'm sure Brad and his team will put information on how to contact everybody in the whatever they call it on YouTube. You can book a demo at tablogs.com, or if you have questions, you can reach Declan directly at declan@tablogs.com. That's pretty easy. So thank you very much for joining, and I'll spin this back to Brad.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Scott.
And we did already, somebody asked, how can we get in touch with Declan on LinkedIn? So I already put your profile in the YouTube chat, so you may get some messages that way. Go back, look throughout the slides. Again, Eric gave you info on how you can book a demo with TabLogs. It's easy, it's fun. That's why we're doing these live streams this way. We're really excited to have TabLogs on board for this one. We'll have the second half of their live series later this year. To everybody who watched today, thanks for being with us. For those people who contributed in the chat and asked questions, extra thank you to those guys, because without that kind of interaction, this would be pretty pointless. It would be just some people talking and listening, and we might as well have it pre-recorded and do this at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're all super alert. At least Scott would be, because of the amount of Mountain Dew he consumes throughout the day. Importantly, if you liked what you saw, and you probably did because you're here at the end, again, click like, subscribe, and get notifications. And yes, we let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. The next Geo-Institute live stream in the summer of live is 9 days away. It's going to be next Thursday. GeoStrata Extra. As always, we pick one article from the current issue of GeoStrata and we go behind it with the authors, find out some additional details, things they left out, things they put in that they were maybe on the fence about. It's always a good time. This one is on large-scale pile testing, and you can hear from Ann Lemnitzer and Will Schaefer from the University of California at Irvine. So Declan, Scott, thank you guys so much for doing this today. I hope it was a good time.
It was. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Eric.
And Eric, facile moderating as always. Well done. We appreciate it. You make it look easy. You make it look good. Our producer today was Aurora Flieger, and we will see everybody out there with another Geo-Institute live stream very soon.